Let me again thank you for the invitation. It's a little bit strange from my point of view because I was here, as you said, a few weeks ago as a French ambassador to Belgrade, and frankly speaking, I think I left part of my heart in Belgrade, so the idea to accept the invitation was also to come here to take it back and take it back with me because I think I missed it. But I'm seeing so many friendly faces, and being in Belgrade since yesterday, I think I will still let this piece of the heart in Belgrade and will be compelled to come back again because it's really a pleasure to be with you today. Well, region in general is of highest importance, and we need to do more. And we are perfectly conscious that we need to do more. Speaking only for France, there is a feeling that during the last years, maybe we have not been as much involved as we should have been, and I think the recent visit of President Macron was kind of a success for that. It was frankly overdue because it was the first visit of a head of state by France for the last 18 years. So we wanted to show that we care about the region. We care about Serbia, we care about a bilateral relationship, we want to do more. We are more and more present economically, politically, in terms of culture also, and people-to-people connections, but it is also the case for the whole region. And that's why we designed what we are calling a strategy for Balkans in Paris, which basically means that the bottom line of the strategy is to increase France's involvement in the region because, as you said, considerable progress has been achieved over the last 15-20 years, but the Western Balkan countries still face important challenges on their way towards lasting stability and socio-economic development. And we want to be there, we want to be more present, we want to help. We are increasing our cooperation in socio-economic development, and the French Development Agency has opened here a bureau in Belgrade, and will be spending 100 million euros annually in the course of the following years, getting grants, getting help. We want also to be more present in security, in justice, in defense, in all that issues. So again, the bottom line is that we do think the region is important, and we want to be more and more present. This is a strategic importance for us. Second point is that, and to answer to your question, is that we definitely see the future of the region clearly in the European Union. There is no doubt about it. The Western Balkans were given what we are calling a European perspective several times. The last one during the EU Western Balkans Summit in Sofia. And when he was there, and you mentioned the speech he delivered in front of the Monument for France in the heart of Belgrade, in Kalemegdan Square, President Macron made it clear, he recalled publicly his commitment, stretching that our strategy aim is to stabilize the Western Balkans within the European Union. So the Western Balkans countries are welcome in the EU. I think this is a real belief from the President and from France, and as it was said, EU will not be completed without the Western Balkans. So I want to be completely clear on that, and during the discussions which are still ongoing, so it's a little bit hard to comment them as we speak, I know that we made the point, the French delegation made the point that we want to reassess that commitment. And this is a process, and you are already in the process. Of course, Serbia is in the process, Montenegro, because the negotiations are already open, but also the other countries are also in the process. They are part of the EU, they are in the process. Now, what we have to decide, and it is the credibility and the responsibility of that process. And as you know, our position on enlargement policy is based on two principles. First of all, the candidates need to fulfill all the criteria, and we had the debate on Albania. We do think that still more is to be done, more especially in Albania, but also in North Macedonia. We do recognize the importance of the Prespa agreement, but we set some criteria last June in North Macedonia, for example, for the Special Procuratorial Office, in Albania, the judicial reform, and the functioning of the parliament. This is an issue also of credibility for the Council to stick to his own words. So I think this is important for us to recognize that more, I would say, reforms are to be done in this regard. The second point is the reform of the EU, and I think this is a fact that reform is needed inside the EU, not only in the enlargement policy but in general. And France is pushing forward an ambitious agenda on reform, which is not contradictory to enlargement perspective. And I think, again, my president made it clear during his speech here in Belgrade, mid-July, that these are two processes which can move in parallel. Reforms inside the countries, which are candidates, to make it possible for them to join at the end of the process the EU, based on merits, based on a criteria-based approach, and reform within the EU without changing the treaties, to be able to make it more functional. And you know, it's good to be part of a club, but it's even better to be part of a club which is functioning. And I think we need to recognize that the institutions are working, okay, but it could be much better, and it was not designed to work with more than 20 countries as we are working right now. So there is an urgent need for reform also. That is the reason why we are also pushing a reform for enlargement policy, based on an approach that would be more, I would say, respectful of the country also, to tell the truth to the country, to tell the truth to the people. We need to imagine something that could be maybe more gradual. As we speak, and you say there is a kind of European fatigue, because you're holding your breath for many years, and at the end of the process you hope to be able to breathe again. I think we can try to design something in which the countries could benefit from the EU much more in advance, maybe taking part in some policies, but with some gradual steps, and which will be more concrete, more gradual, more precise, and maybe also, if needed, more reversible, because we also need to take into account the fact that the issues that you mentioned at the beginning, rule of law, Chapter 23, Chapter 24, much more needs to be done. And even in the countries of the region which are in the process of the enlargement, with which the negotiation process was already open, we are facing problems with these issues. So it is a fact that I think this is a real need for improvement in this issue on that. And I think this is a firm belief of the President Macron. That's why we have this debate right now inside the European Council to try to make it possible. I think the door is not closed. We have not said no. It's not France and maybe some other countries against all the other countries. This is not true. The Council is, as we speak, divided. But some countries want to open the negotiation process for the two countries which are at stake. Some prefer to open it only for one. Some are against any kind of decoupling. I think we need to be united on that. We need to maybe take some time again to discuss the issue. But the door is not closed at all, and it is not a no. It is not a French no. It is a yes, but a yes but, I would say. Yes, but we need to be sure that the criteria are met inside the countries. And yes, but we need to reform the enlargement procedures and enlargement policy to give to the people hope that the process will be, at the end, benefit to the people, and not only benefit to the people with real results and real, I would say, achievements, which is still to be proven as we speak. Last point, to underline what also Mrs. Ashton said, and also Susan, critical importance of the resumption of the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade. This was also a strong commitment from my president when he was in Belgrade. This is not the Marseillaise, but almost. Thank you for helping me to this. We want to help. The President made it clear that he is able to, he really is willing to host a meeting in Paris if it can be useful. Once we will have a government in Pristina, which will be able to resume the dialogue. We want to help. We are ready to hold that meeting together with Germany, I guess, if we can speed up the process. We think the status quo is a very dangerous situation. A lot has been achieved, but the agreement that were drafted with the great help of Honourable Catherine Ashton in 2013 needs to be fully implemented. We need to step up the process. We think the status quo is dangerous. We also do think that the EU should have the lead on the issue because it is an issue of European security, and we are fully supporting the EU mediation. We hope that Mr. Borrell will be ready to take full responsibility of the issue very soon. We have seen with great interest that he has said that the first trip will be in the region, and especially in Pristina, and we do think it's very important. We are ready to encourage, and we stay behind him to encourage this. Of course, we need also to coordinate closely with the US, and we do think that the recent nomination of a special representative by President Trump is also important, and we do think as a positive gesture that the process will be able to speed up. Again, this is really one of the key of the security of the region, and we want to be supportive on that very much. We are engaged, and as far as the substance is concerned, as you know, we believe this is up to the responsibility of the two parties to set up the content of an agreement. We have no red lines. We are not giving any blank check. We hope that we could find a comprehensive and definitive resolution to this dispute that could solve the issue and foster the stability of the region. Just to end, I would like to give a note of hope, I would say. Again, I'm not sure. Of course, we are, as we speak, the European Council is ongoing, so there is a sense of drama and so on. But frankly speaking, I think a lot of achievements were done during the last 15, 20 years. A lot of things will need to be made in the years to come. We are engaged, we are committed. We are not forgetting at all the Western Balkans. Quite the contrary, as I told you, we want to be more engaged. We have done significant gestures during the last months to show that France wants to be more and more involved. Visit of President Macron, but not only, again, French Development Agency, more cooperation in a lot of issues. I don't want to be too long. European perspective for the Balkans. This is a reality. This is not a hope. This is a reality. The process is ongoing. The Commission is working. The Member States are working. We do hope we will find an agreement among ourselves today or tomorrow. If not, the process will be going. And we are also advocating for ambitious reform of the EU, not to block the system, but quite the contrary, to make the system workable and efficient, which is not completely the case as we speak. And third and last point, critical importance of the resumption of the dialogue as soon as possible between Pristina and Belgrade, and we are committed. We want to help. We are ready to host a meeting in Paris if it is useful. We are ready to help Mr. Borrell as soon as he is in office, and we do think that we need, in this issue, more and more involvement and more political impetus.
Thank Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for the clarity of the recommitment or constant commitment to the enlargement to this part of the world. Obviously, we are all impatiently awaiting for the nomination of the Special Envoy of the European Union. We know that there's lots of talks, names are being thrown into a basket. Of course, we are all hostages to the process of the nomination of the new Commission, hopefully rather sooner than later, because we need that European person to step into the role and to meet his American counterparts. David Kostalanchik, last but not least, the US has played a fundamental role in this whole history of the 3 decades of what has happened in this region. If I may put it that way, the US has taken a very active backseat, rightly ceding the key role to the European Union. This is European territory, the European geopolitical area. But we know that an American representative has always sat at the table in Brussels where Cathy Ashton engaged these talks. Philip Rieker was one of them. He is now acting Assistant Secretary. We have the 2 special envoys, Matt Palmer, who served in the embassy in Belgrade, among other things, Ambassador Grenell as well. And the problem that we have had in the 90s under Milosevic's regime, and sort of we were shouting from the rooftops from here, please speak with one voice. The difference of voices, both differences of European voices, difference between European and American voices, did not help. Finally, those voices came together, and that was, you know, whether it was Dayton or later on, it was a crucial moment. So I believe lessons have been learned, that the US plays that constructive role. There's no beating around the bush. The US is the stronger voice in Pristina, in Kosovo. You know, everybody will tell you that. So how do you see the role in the US as these new positions have been announced?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Let me start with that question first. Let me just say that the appointment of Ambassador Grenell as President Trump's special envoy through Serbia-Kosovo negotiations, and the appointment by Secretary Pompeo of Matt Palmer as his special representative for the Balkans, I think underlines a sustained attention from the United States to the Western Balkans. You have in us a partner. We see in the Western Balkans, not just, as some have mentioned here before, unfinished business, but great potential that needs to be unleashed, and that we want to help play a role to do. The vision that's been articulated for the countries of the region, integration into Euro-Atlantic European institutions, is not our vision. It's not a vision, I think, of any of ours. It's a vision of the countries themselves. And so in that, I hope that you see in the United States, and you will continue to have in the United States, a partner in that process, helping and assisting our European colleagues as they assist the countries of the regions. I'd also underline that the fundamental questions, the issues that have been pointed out here that are essential for integration, whether it be improved transparency in government, rule of law, freedom of the media, for us, they are not just boxes that get checked on the acquis checklist, but they should be seen as pillars of a stronger society, of a closer relationship between government and its citizens. All of this takes leadership, it takes courage, vision, and willingness to take risks. We've seen that most notably in the case of North Macedonia, and I'll just briefly, to that, not to go further on to the subject that's been addressed by esteemed colleagues here, the United States strongly supports the accession of North Macedonia and Albania. We firmly agreed with the Commission's May assessment that the 2 countries had made significant reform progress, not to mention the PRESPA agreement as representing an excellent example of a reward being worth the risk that I had highlighted before. So We think that those countries have laid a solid foundation to continue their reforms while opening and closing key chapters. So regardless of the decision this week, we will continue to urge Skopje and Tirana to press ahead with reforms that strengthen rule of law, tackle corruption, and cement democratic governance. We're doing so in North Macedonia by encouraging rule of law, development of independent judicial system. I would just conclude on that by noting these have been really courageous steps that have been taken by both countries, most notably North Macedonia, and we really hope that the European Union can take a move towards these countries as they have moved towards the European Union. Briefly, in Albania, there are a lot of things at play there. We've been disappointed by the impasse that threatens to hinder Albania's progress, and we have encouraged all parties there to engage. We think that for the opposition that has left the parliament, a seat at the table exists for them, and we have strongly, I recently on a visit there and in discussions with leaders in Washington, we encourage them to take it and to negotiate in good faith to try to make progress there. I'll turn to the very important issue that other colleagues have addressed that is of great significance to the United States, and that is the normalization of Kosovo-Serbia relations. Resolving this fault line remains a strategic priority for the United States, and we think it is the way to pave the path towards a more peaceful and prosperous future. It's been noted here that Kosovo just recently held elections. The United States has expressed and continues to express strongly to the leaders of all parties in Kosovo, notably those that are in the process of government formation, our hope and expectation that they would formulate a pro-dialogue government ready to suspend the tariffs that have damaged Kosovo's international standing. Kosovo needs a government that can speak with one single coherent voice, one that has realistic objectives for a plan and how to achieve it. The United States continues to stand and will always stand behind Kosovo's sovereignty and independence, but we have made it very clear to Kosovo that there is not a path to the future that does not include reconciliation with Serbia. So, in that regard as well, I would call upon colleagues here in Serbia, in Belgrade, which has been aggressive in its efforts to delegitimize Kosovo on the international stage, to focus on its own strategic interests. The campaign to incentivize countries to withdraw recognition from Kosovo and block membership in international organizations has soured the atmosphere for compromise and impeded progress. The fact that there are two significant gentlemen who are envoys of the United States now focused on this region, on supporting the two parties, Serbia and Kosovo, in the dialogue, means that both have the full attention and support of the United States government behind the effort to resolve this issue once and for all. If I may be so humble as to suggest, don't squander the opportunity. With mutual recognition at its core, an agreement to normalize relations will allow both countries to, as I noted before, realize their potential, their enormous potential, and to put the violence of the 1990s fully in the past. We with the help of our special representative, Matt Palmer, are focused on other parts of the Western Balkans as well, too. In Bosnia, we continue to support a stable, prosperous country moving towards its self-declared desire to join Euro-Atlantic institutions. Bosnia's institutions need to work for its people, and this means integrity of the judicial system, improved rule of law, and transparency of governance. This has not been easy, and we've been disappointed in the leadership of Bosnia on all sides, particularly at the state and entity levels, but we're encouraged by a new generation of younger political leaders emerging at the cantonal level, committed to cooperation across political parties. This is really, really important, and we would hope that Bosnia's neighbors, Serbia and Croatia, would help and support these efforts. I would be remiss in not noting as well, too, especially in light of the recent visit by Secretary Pompeo to Montenegro, the importance of hard work that Montenegro has demonstrated over the last 13 years, showing hard work does pay off. Montenegro is now a valued contributor to global security, and we think that it will continue to make progress towards integration into Euro-Atlantic institutions, European institutions, the EU, provided it can strengthen rule of law, address media freedom questions, and tackle important questions like organized crime. There's a lot going on. There's other factors in the region that you've pointed out that are significant for the United States as well, too. We note the attention that other countries, Russia and China, are addressing to the region. I would just say that whereas it seems to us that Russia's interests are not in line with those of the countries or of the more strategic interests of the United States and the European Union to foster integration, China has played a more active role in the region now, certainly in terms of perhaps trying to buy loyalty in ways. We wonder sometimes whether Chinese financing or investment in the region is ultimately in the long-term interests of the countries, but this is a sovereign decision for countries to make. We would just encourage you to make it with eyes wide open and to consider not just the economic, but the long-term political aspects of any decisions. So I'll just end by noting again the political attention, economic attention that the United States is now devoting to the region in the two persons of our envoys, but in our longer-term, sustained assistance to the region, support for rule of law, freedom of the media, fighting corruption, will not change. We think that a stronger Western Balkans makes for a stronger Europe and a stronger transatlantic partnership, and you can count on the United States in that.
David, thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes, if the organizers allow, for a Q&A, and I will collect 3 or 4 questions. So any hands raised over there, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Ebel from the Canadian Embassy. A question for Baroness Ashton. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now, 5 years after you've occupied the role of High Representative, I'd be interested in hearing your perspectives on what's working and what's not for the EU in the Western Balkans. Some people have suggested perhaps the EU is being too soft. For example, Sejdic-Finci was once a very important condition. The timing of that has now been changed. Serbia as an EU candidate country, is expected to align with a common foreign and security policy, but the divergence with that policy and Serbia's foreign policy is increasing, growing greater rather than diminishing. In important values of human rights and democracy and media freedom, which the EU upholds, seem to apply in many cases, but not necessarily in Hungary. And then, of course, we've got the question of North Macedonia, where the mantra has always been from the European Union, you deliver, we'll deliver. And now the message might be, you deliver and we'll slam the door in your face. So it has been said that the meek will inherit the earth, but could it be that the EU has to take a firmer and clearer line? Thank you.
Okay, hold that. We'll go back there. There was a question, and then here.
Thanks. Question is comment and question for Mr. from USA. Thanks for telling us that we must recognize Texas. We will do it tomorrow. But tell me, how that will improve relationship in Balkan region? Thanks.
Up front here. Can we get a microphone?
Thank you. Vladimir Međik, European Movement. I have a question from Ambassador Mondoloni. You mentioned a gradual approach, something that resembles what we are speaking about as sectorial integration. Can you share any more details about plans, ideas, any thoughts that we haven't heard of, anything? Thank you.
Over there. Yeah. And then the lady in the same row.
Thank you. I'm Nikola Dujovski from Skopje, North Macedonia. I would like to comment and to ask Mr. Mondoloni about his position on three main issues he discussed about. First, that this region deserves support, which was clearly stated by President Macron on 15th of July in Belgrade. Second, that there is no, that the future of the Western Balkans is in the EU. And third, but still we should check credibility and responsibility of the process of negotiations. And third, reform of the EU, which should probably be done in the very same time. I think that according to this, no one will have excuse why not to open negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania. And could you please, if you have any position now, what should those two countries done in the near future if today or tomorrow we receive a negative answer from EU? What should be next done? Because we have done a lot of things. In only 2 years, we changed our society, not to mention PRESPA agreement, not to mention fight against organized crime, all other reforms in the judiciary system, freedom of media, etc., etc., etc. What is the next? What should North Macedonia and Albania done? Thank you.
Hello, Sanja Sovrlić. I'm from Kosovo, and I would like to address my question to Mrs. Ashton. As you probably know, main result of Brussels agreement is integration of North Kosovo into Kosovo system, and I can say it was non-democratic and even painful process for community in North Kosovo. And on the other side, main agreement from, let's say, for Serbian side was agreement about association, which is not implemented. And today we have talks about partition, land swap, and that kind of possibility for some final agreement, comprehensive agreement. Do you think that is maybe failure of Brussels agreement?
Tomasz Żernaczuk from the Polish Institute of International Affairs. I have a comment and a question to our French guests. You were speaking about the not only credibility, but also the responsibility of the enlargement process. And I'm just wondering, as you say that, why you only now come up with this idea to reform the enlargement process, and why you were hiding behind the Greek back for years. I think this is not only incredible, but it's also irresponsible in this regard. So that's my comment. And the question is, since we already got somehow ridiculously to this point, why can't we simply open the negotiation? And I'm repeating, opening the option to negotiate. And at the same time, while preparing those 2 countries, out of 6, 2 countries, also slowly reforming, if it's needed, the enlargement process. Why can't we just open it and doing both things at the same time? Thank you very much.
Okay, there was a final question here.
Thank you very much. Adlira Johnny from Albania. Also a question for our dear French friend. Yes. So yesterday, Mr. Macron, he said that there is a big problem with Albanians going and claiming asylum to France, and the 3 main reasons to say no to our country, a little bit different from Macedonia, but still for us, is organized crime, corruption, and the immigration, and the enlargement fatigue. Now, there is a problem with all these 3 things. The crimes, our criminals are already all in the European Union. They are selling drugs and dealing with the high demand of your citizens. Number 2, our politicians are having very nice and luxurious dinners with your friends in Brussels and in your capitals, so they are also in Europe. And enlargement fatigue, it is not our fault. So our citizens are being punished for crimes they do not make, for politicians who do not vote, and also for enlargement fatigue that it is not made by our own countries. So my question is the France no to our politicians or to our people? And if it is to our people, what is wrong with our people? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. We're back to the panel, and I'll start with Cathy Ashton.
So if I begin with our Canadian colleague, there's a whole lecture, essay, and deep conversation that you and I could have on everything that you covered. So let me just pick up a couple of things. The first is, the European Union is a living, breathing thing. It's currently 28 countries. I've no idea what it's going to be next week from my own perspective. And what binds us together are the principles and values that we share. Do those get stretched and stressed and battered from time to time? You bet. Does that mean that we should move away from the fundamental beliefs we have? Absolutely not. And it is the fact that you can bring the sovereign states in the most extraordinary manner around a table. As domestic politicians, they don't leave their bags behind at the door that says domestic politician and become somehow Europeans. They arrive with all of the problems, concerns, politics, ideas that they have from home. I don't say that as any kind of excuse. I say to you, it is the most extraordinary construction you could possibly imagine, and the capacity within those stresses and strains to actually reach decisions together. In the 5 years that I chaired 3 councils, still astonished me time after time, because people came looking for consensus and solutions, even with all of those difficulties. But please don't underestimate the domestic considerations that governments have. There are elections somewhere in Europe, in the European Union, all the time. There are dramatic changes, take my own country, that happen. And there are things that mean politicians are wary and concerned and worried about issues that when you look at it from the outside, and I often say this to my colleagues in the United States, we're not one mass, we're not like the United States of America. This is not the same. It is sovereign nations choosing to come together and choosing to pool their capacity to act. And they do it with all of those difficulties as well. Having said that, when you make a commitment to a country like North Macedonia that did the bravest and most difficult of things, you must honour it. That is also part and parcel of the European ideal. And for those nations represented here who are frustrated and fed up, want to know what Europe's doing, why have we not done more, and so on, well, that's partly that the European Union is a global player. It operates in so many different places. When I was working on the Brussels dialogue, I was also leading the Iran negotiations. I was also involved in many other issues and challenges across, for example, what we call the Arab Spring, I never stopped. I didn't take a day off for a very long time, as I recall, and I'm sure my successor has done the same. The point is that you have to also grab this opportunity, which you are doing, and do things like the leaders have done, the 3 leaders who've met, and said, we're going to do this. We're actually going to start working together. We're going to start looking at trade between us. We're going to open up what we're doing. And I understand that your ideal is to have a clear perspective, a clear time frame, know what you have to do, and be prepared to do the difficult things that you are willing to do with a sure and certain knowledge. And it affects everything from how you approach your foreign policy to what you do about putting business or the judicial reforms and the pains and difficulties of doing all of that, if at the end of it you fear that you may be empty-handed. All I would say is do it anyway, because doing judicial reform, rooting out corruption, sorting out a coherent foreign policy, and living by the values and principles that brought the European Union together is worth it in any event. But I am confident and certain that your future is in the European Union, and I cannot wait to celebrate that day.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Mondoloni, if you can be succinct, because we are running out of time, and you have already said some of the things that you've been asked about. So.
Thank you. So I will maybe just try to answer anyway to make a few points. First of all, just want to be clear again, and I said it already, but that opposition is by no way an excuse not to do reforms. I mean, quite the contrary. I think we are seeing it as a further impetus to do reforms that are badly needed within all the 6 Western Balkan countries, the 2 countries which are already candidate and the others. And this is, I think, very important. This is a message that is want to support the reforms, and also, by the way, the people which are supporting the reforms and the European Union for quite a long time. And I just want to also to take this opportunity to thank the Belgrade Security Forum and the organizer for their hard work and in trying to put the European issues, the rule of law and European reform issues for high in the agenda on the region and this country for a long time. So I would just want to take this opportunity also to thank the Belgrade Security Forum and all the organizers for that. So by no way it is an excuse not to do reforms, and it is quite the contrary. On the reform per se, thank you for the question. It's a little bit maybe we don't have time to be more explicit, but it's true that we consider that the enlargement process does not deliver the profound changes that are required in the candidate countries so far. And so we consider that a reviewed approach is required with a view to ensure that negotiations are more gradual, as I said, more concrete in the benefits they bring to the countries and to the population. Maybe we can think about sequencing. Maybe we can think of for the candidate countries to be able to participate to some European policies already before full accession. And also, if necessary, reversible, because we are seeing that sometimes, unfortunately, the countries may diverge from the EU instead of converging with it. And this is also an issue that we should tackle very, very much, with the help, of course, inside the country of all the people which are in charge of them. On the requirements, I don't want to be too long. We have already exhausted the time. I think it was clear that, and you mentioned already what was said by the President, that we need, for us, the full implementation of the criteria that were set in last June. So for North Macedonia, it was focused mainly on the issue of the Special Procurator Office. And Albania, I mentioned judicial reform, which I think is important. But more generally, again, I think the debate is difficult, but I do hope that we will be able to find a way within the EU and with the Commission to launch these 2 processes in parallel and to converge not too far away. I hope very soon for all these criteria to be met and for the yes, which is a yes, with 2 buts, but it's not a no, to be completely agreed among ourselves. Yeah.
Susanna, some closing thoughts?
Because I was thinking time is really of the essence, and I think we shouldn't, decisions have to be taken now, not hastily, but we cannot afford to postpone and postpone and postpone and postpone, because there are a number of issues, a number of things happening at the same time. We have huge waves of migration from the region coming to Europe, and these people will be missing here to build up the countries. We have third countries eyeing how the European Union, how the countries themselves are developing. And we have also the potential of rising nationalism, which will not help in the end the region to consolidate. So these issues also all have to be kept in mind. And so it's also an appeal to all of us, again, also to take decisions, positive decisions now.
And David.
I'll just end and reiterate, the gentleman asked me a question about recognition of Kosovo by Serbia. I mean, it's... well, Texas once was an independent nation. If you'd like to recognize them again, I'm sure there are many countries that have representation in Texas, and they would appreciate your continued attention. But there is not that kind of tension and long history. Texas has been a part of the Union of the United States since 1836. In the case of Kosovo, a newly independent country, it's our firm belief that recognition, again, addresses an issue that is standing in the way of Serbia's long-term integration into the European Union, cooperation with other institutions. It's not an easy process. The United States does not think that it is. We know it will be extremely difficult, long, arduous, but you have our support, and you will have our support in encouraging the Kosovars in a productive and constructive direction as well to address the concerns that Serbia has as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Two of the briefest concluding remarks. As I think everyone has said in their own way, this is really about the strength and resilience of Europe and the European Union. And clearly this micro-region that we inhabit, called the Western Balkans, is part of that larger geopolitical strategy. Let me just add that it was very important under France's leadership, among others, to bring in Bulgaria and Romania in 2007. Let's just imagine NATO and the European Union without Romania and Bulgaria, with the assertive Russia, as we politely say, with an open flank. So it was an important decision, even though we all know Romania and Bulgaria were not ready for it. So this is about Europe. And secondly, there was a panel on demography last night, but I think it's very important to reiterate that we have a huge demographic problem. If I dare say so, a number of European countries are sucking in like a vacuum cleaner a lot of people here, not only bright IT graduated people, but electricians, plumbers, nurses. We need to work together. We are in the same boat on this. We need to find ways in which these countries will not remain depleted of people, and they'll all be somewhere in other European member states. So with that note of caution, please join me in thanking the panel.